When you say it's all the same decision, what do you mean by that?
Well, it's the same decision in the story. It's portrayed as being the same decision.
Oh, okay.
And it's the same decision when we make it in our own minds. Now, for most of us, what's in our own minds is mostly not knowledge. In our minds, we've got stories, we've got images, we've got ideas, perspectives, explanations. For most of us, the purpose of most of this stuff is to make us comfortable, to make us safe, to make us important, to make us gratified. That's not knowledge. When we look at our own minds, which is to say when we look at our lives, most of what we see is like a complex of video games with artificial rules, artificial boundaries, artificial ideas of what constitutes winning and losing. And the purpose of these games is to protect us from anything real, from anything we might actually feel. That's what we've got instead of knowledge. Now, we do have some knowledge, most of us do, unless you're permanently catatonic or very, very far into Jesus. With those exceptions, you do have some knowledge. But for most of us, this knowledge is buried under so many layers of protective talk that it's barely recognizable.
Okay, people have always lived in video games of one kind or another. The Christian religion is obviously that. Christian faith is just a matter of believing that the game is real. All religions are like that, really, and religions are just the most obvious things. We do this all the time. Everybody has got their own little religion they live in. Why do we do this?
So we don't have to know anything. We may be doing well or less well in the games that we have manufactured. But either way, the games make us feel as if we know, feel as if we understand. We're standing on solid ground. Now, what's wrong with this is that if we're really going to know anything, if we're going to be anything besides a game, then the first thing we have to do is admit that we don't know, that we don't understand, that we're not standing on solid ground. Real knowledge has a different feel than the games do. It has a different flavor, a different presence. Because when we really know something, we never know it fully and finally and completely. Because real knowledge is never full and final and complete. The games, an aspect of the games, may well be full and final and complete. Because they're artificial. We made them! So we may well have made them full and final and complete. Real knowledge is always something we're in the process of approaching. It's something, real knowledge is something we're in the process of learning. When we really know, then we never know in a final sense. Because we're always in the process of finding out. Whenever we know something, we're not alone. Whenever we know something, we're not alone. And if we're not alone, we're not in the games anymore. The world is now very, very different. Now do you see why, when Sigurd chose to accept knowledge, and when Sigurd chose to accept Brynhild, it was the same decision.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Because he's not in the games anymore. He's out here with her, where she is.
Okay.
We're outside the games now. It's a very different world now. There are no artificial boundaries. There are no prefigured rules. There are no final definitions. There are no comforting, protective answers. We're not alone anymore. And so the world is now has a very different presence, a different feel, a different flavor. It's not a game. But the thing is, if we realize that we're not a game anymore, and that the world is not a game, and we haven't accepted that these things aren't here anymore, the rules, the boundaries, the answers, the definitions, if we haven't accepted that those things are gone, that they're not here, and if we haven't accepted that we're not alone anymore, if we haven't accepted that, we're scared and we want protection. And that's why we keep making the games. Because the games, you understand that?
Mm-hmm, I understand.
There we go. Because the games consist of things that we feel as if we know, and we feel as if we're in control. We feel as if we control. So, if we're going to really know anything, if we're going to be anything besides just a game,
mm-hmm.
then we have to take a certain attitude, we have to make a certain response
Okay.
to those things that we don't know, that we're not in control of. And we have to make a certain response to those things that don't necessarily make us feel as if we're comfortable and gratified and important and safe and even hopeful of getting out alive. If we're going to be anything besides just a game, if we're going to know anything, we have to make the same response that Sigurd made and that Oedipus made. And that response is called Odin or Apollo.